Simon. Simon, thanks, Andrea. Simon is, what is your title? President, owner, creator, founder?
All of the above.
Of FINTRACKER. Simon, up until recently, was a Royal LePager out west. Is that correct? And now you're
in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
In Winnipeg, and you're doing this full time now. Is that right?
That is correct.
It's kind of blown up. I remember seeing FINTRACKER for the first time probably at a TREB event. I want to say maybe 4 years ago, something like that.
It's been about 5.5 years now that we've been at it, and we've really come a long ways.
It has definitely come a long way. It's very different from when I first saw it. I don't want to give too much away. I'll let you take the floor and you do your thing.
Yes. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you and introduce to you a wonderful solution to our FINTRACK dilemma and or our daunting task known as FINTRACK. My name is Simon Fiore. I'm a fellow agent, been an agent for 11 years, still active, just not very active these days. I'm just keeping my license because I love real estate, and it has led me to create this solution for my little office in Winnipeg, which then turned into an industry solution coast to coast. Over 36,000 agents today, 18 real estate boards and counting offer this as a member benefit, and companies like yours as well. So I'm going to dive right in, and I need to get hosting capabilities. If someone could give me a co-host.
Yeah, my apology. I thought that I did.
No
Let me
worries.
just do that right
We can
now.
hear it there. Oops.
Oops.
If you have any questions, you can type them into the chat and we'll address them at the end, or possibly we'll unmute and allow the question to be spoken.
Yeah, we can do that at the end.
Right. Just going to share my screen here. So for those of you who are like me, looking for the path of least resistance early on in my career, before we developed FINTRACKER, I used to take photos of my clients' IDs and store them on my cell phone and recall them later on to get the information off of it. Not only was that making my clients uncomfortable, but it was in violation of the Privacy Act without written consent. And getting a consent form signed is just another form we don't need. So we want you to replace that habit of taking photos and storing them, or photocopies, whatever you did, and use the FINTRACKER app. Download FINTRACKER on the App Store's Google Play Store, enter your board, fill out the registration form, and we'll synchronize you to your office. You'll receive a welcome email with a tutorial video and the ability to reset your password. Use the password that you'll remember. Your username is your first and last name or the email address you register with. That's the only reason your email is used, is to set up the account. You can also add a 4-digit PIN or facial biometrics or thumbprint to sign in quickly, depending on your device. I use Face ID, and I'm in. This is the home screen. You'll see 2 columns at the top, incomplete and completed folder. The incomplete folder is where you will scan and save your client's forms by replacing it with taking a photo of your client's ID. I'll start with the individual identification form, which is option 2. Just select that and hit the big green button that says Scan Photo ID. We give you some quick instructions to scan the back of the driver's license or provincial ID cards, which are virtually the same, or the passport, which has the photo page. That's where all the encrypted data is hidden. We'll do a license today. And if the ID is expired, we acknowledge that, or we'll notify you to get a current document. So or fraudulent, we detect that as well. So you get a current document and just hold it over, scan it. You don't have to press any buttons. What we do is auto-populate the Canadian Real Estate Association individual ID form with all your clients' info except for occupation. Let's say the client is a plumber. He works for ABC Plumbing, and we've broken the fields down into 3 fields that will be populated to the 1 occupation field on the form that you're familiar with. Industry, let's say construction, and there's all the info. You press OK. You can save this for later at this stage if you want. It'll show up in your incompleted file folder with the red alert icon next to it. So maybe you write the deal or execute the listing. You can go in, complete that individual ID by filling out the remaining fields. Designated as a buyer or seller, so your office knows that there's an offer or listing coming behind this. We've pre-populated your name and brokerage on the form and today's date. We use a map widget for the transaction property address, and you can select the address that you're working on. We'll avoid abbreviated city, province, and missing postal codes, which is the most common deficiencies in these submissions. Set that. Moving on, it knows it's a government issued ID. That's checked off. All the client's information is there. All that remains is third party, yes or no. Client risk assessment. Is this a Canadian citizen and physically present? Or is the client not physically present? Well, in the in-person scan that we just used, the client has to be physically present. If you're using our remote ID process, which I'll show you next, you would select this one, not physically present. But let's keep it simple for this one. Residential property. This is a business relationship section. Every transaction is considered a business relationship. So you are to complete that section each time. And you're familiar with these fields. So it's just a matter of selecting the applicable boxes. Additional measures taken. We ask the client to provide identification each time and ensure the client information is current. You can select that and we'll populate that paragraph to the form, or maybe your office policy is to run the name through an internet search. You can do that as well. Politically exposed. Is the client in a significant political role or head of international organization? And I've been told that now that includes sporting teams or franchises. So you can ask that question, or at arm's length with anybody in those positions. If the answer is yes, you would go and answer those next few fields. If the answer is no, those fields disappear. Ask the individual, when did you do that? Today. And don't be afraid to make a mistake with FINTRACKER. If you try and submit a form that's incomplete, we'll take you to that form or that section, and you have to complete it so you can move on. At this stage, you have completed the individual ID. You can add a second individual on the offer or the listing, a spouse or a partner, and repeat the process, except transaction property address, your name, your brokerage will already be pre-populated. Or they're representing a corporation, you hit the corporate ID, and again, we'll pre-populate it to the best of our ability, leaving you with the blanks to fill in. For today, let's do a receipt of funds. So you're representing a buyer, or maybe you're representing both the buyer and the seller, and you're collecting a deposit check. You have to complete a receipt of funds. Your name, your brokerage, transaction property address, all pre-populated. Just fill in the blanks. Canadian dollars there by default. When did you receive the deposit? Let's say today. What type of deposit? Check. In the event if it's a bank draft, we give you a little message here. You must make the effort to ask for the origins account number. So the bank draft has the bank institution information on it, but not where the funds were drawn from. So you must ask the client, did this come from your personal account? If so, can I have that account number? And you'll document that under account number 2. Account number 1 would have the bank draft information, and account number 2 will have the origins account number, where the funds are drawn from. It's very important that you make this attempt. Auditors are looking specifically for this, as it is the largest loophole for money laundering. For today, let's say that the deposit was simply a check in person, when or what the reason for the deposit was. Let's say condominium, and account number will be entered here. Account name, holder name, financial institution, ABC Bank, type of account, checkings, and you're done. You will submit this to your office by selecting the individual ID, the receipt of funds, and hitting next. Your office compliance officer will be auto-populated here by default. If you're set up with the admin portal, I believe your office will be. If not, you'll enter an email and it will send the PDF by way of email. If you're using a document management system, you can unselect all options and open up the PDF to upload to your document management system. You can also access those PDFs via desktop or on your device under your completed file folder. And what does that finished product look like? So I'll recalling the data from our server to the form on my app, as nothing is stored on the device, only the name of the transaction. And we're going to open up the PDF, and there it is, legible, fully complete individual ID form and a politically exposed form. Even though you answered none of the above, it has to show that you asked the individual in person and when. So that is the finished product that they receive. So for those of you that joined late, again, that's scan the ID. You don't press any buttons. Enter occupation, ABC Plumbing, construction, and save this for later. And you can complete this whenever you'd like. It'll be here under your incompleted file folder. And I'm just going to clean that up. That's the in-person option. If you're working with the client for a second time, you list their place today and it's time to sell them a property in a month or so, or vice versa. You can go into new individual ID, go to the top, search previous bar. That's the green search previous field up top. Enter the client's name. You can recall the data and create a new form under a new transaction property address and submit it. Just make sure the information is current. For example, are they still working at the same job? Maybe their home address has changed, etc. That's usually if you're reusing the ID 6 months or a year later. But that's a wonderful feature, so you don't have to identify them again. Now let's talk about our newest feature, the remote ID process, which is to be used for non-physically present identification process. Up until March 28th, FINTRACK allowed us to have a FaceTime and get the information off of the screen when the client holds up their ID. That was considered a soft method and a temporary method. As of March 28th, it's no longer acceptable. You must use a technology to verify and authenticate that document. So instead of calling a mandatory to go and identify the individual on your behalf, use the remote ID process. And this process could be used if you forgot to identify your client. It's cheaper than gas. Obviously for you guys, there's no cost. Enter the email address twice. You'll send an email to your clients, and I'm just going to show you what that looks like. They'll receive a temporary link to the FINTRACKER app. They'll begin the remote ID verification, and pay attention here. This is going to revolutionize the industry. I believe this process will replace the whole process in the near future. So get started. The client receives this link. For those that just joined, you email them the link temporary from your app. They'll select the country, the type of ID they want to scan. And what they're going to do is allow access to their camera, scan the front, Yes, it's clear, and it's very easy, user intuitive. Scan the back, and now our software is looking, because it knows it's a Canadian license, it's looking for the rounded corners, the size of the ID, is it a real document, where the text is, where the signature is, where the barcode is, making sure that it meets our checkpoint list, and auto-populating the form in your app in real time. Now it's time to verify the client's identity using a quick biometric scan and comparing their facial biometrics to the ID piece. So they'll press start scan, and it's very simple. They just hold up their face in the magic box here, and they'll have to move around. Once the process is done, you'll receive a verification email that the ID is ready to complete. You head to your app, sign in, and under your incompleted file folder, you'll see the third transaction at the bottom there on mine shows a scan, a face scan emoji next to the name. And that means it was done by way of remote ID. You'll open that up and complete the remaining fields. And we're just loading the data. Again, I have done this in a demo many times, so it's already complete, but I'll show you. You designate it as a buyer or seller, enter the transaction property address, and all the other information is there. You complete the third party risk assessment and business relationship, submit. It's just a matter of click, click, and click. Once you complete that, you can submit. The difference between the remote ID process and the in-person scanning of the ID is that we attach this report that's required by law. So if your client is non-physically present, don't have your client email you a copy or text you a copy of their ID. It's no longer acceptable. They will be looking for this remote identification verification record with the checklist. It has the IP address, the time, stamp when it was done, and now this checklist, document and date, fraud list check, no sign of forgery, no sign of tampering, other security features like barcodes, holograms, watermarks, liveness authenticity, that was a real document and a real person, and the AI face match. So that's all there, and your office will receive that, and you've done this without effort. You send the link to the client does most of it. We're going to shift over a few questions to the client, like what is your occupation and are you acting on behalf of a third party? So to streamline the process even more for you. So stay tuned, much more coming from FinTracker. For those of you who maybe find yourself forgetting how to use some of these features, it is really easy. You can take your own ID and try it out when you download the app. Just don't submit your ID. Your office doesn't want it. You can save it to incomplete and then delete it. We also have tutorials built in the help menu up top, or you can contact support and we're here to help you 24/7. Lastly, you can subscribe to our YouTube page where we update feature videos and any news that comes up. I'd love to take some questions, and if I missed anything, I'll go back in.
So Simon, I just wanted to reiterate that the method that you're using with scanning of your client, FinTrack totally approves that method. That's not something that you just whipped up.
That's correct. So we are a verified identification verification tool. So if you go to the FinTrack's website, FinTrack will state that you must use a technology now to authenticate and verify. We're now, over 36,000 users as of today. And when I opened my emails, you saw the downloads coming in. 18 real estate boards are offering it as a member benefit. We have 4 major companies across Canada, and their legal departments have put us through the gauntlet. I mean, our servers are equal to Manulife servers, the same company who services them. That's where we've invested most of our money. And yes, this isn't something we've whipped up. I hope
I
that
have,
answers.
yeah, definitely, Simon. I have a two-part question from Amy. How long is the info stored in the app to use on the next property, like you showed?
Excellent. So we store all your brokerage's submissions on an admin portal that's available to the brokerage in the event of an audit, any kind of reporting that they need. They have access to all the agents' forms. You as an individual will have access to only your forms. And we store those forms for 6 years, which is required by FINTRAC. In the event that our clients request that the forms are purged, for example, Royal LePage franchise, Royal LePage Corp offices have requested that they purge the data after 1 year, but they're second guessing that now because the agents are saying, I can't find the submission from a year ago, right? So you lose the luxury of searching previous and reusing it. So it's completely up to you guys. We can program it in that we purge your data after 1 year if you want to export all the forms, but that's just way more work for you.
The other part of that question was when one of our agents starts a FINTRACKER profile for somebody, can the office access that, or can the office only access it once it's been submitted?
So that's a loaded question. So your office will only receive fully completed forms, but if you have an admin staff that would like to, for example, a very busy agent might have an assistant and they want the assistant to complete the third-party risk assessment and business relationship. Well, the question is your assistant asking your client if they're acting on behalf of a third party? And if they have to ask you for that information, what is the point of all that work when you can just do this in a few easy steps? But yes, your assistants can sign in with your username and password and complete those forms if you want to scan, fill the occupation, and save. But what I will tell you, once you get used to it, you will whip through these. And you can add receipt of funds later on to the transaction kit. There's many features you can use in there. If a salesperson leaves the company, sorry, you want to help me with that, Mike?
Yeah. So if a salesperson leaves the company, what happens to their information and their account?
Yeah, so if you leave the company, the forms are owned by the brokerage. When you're completing a FINTRAC form or an offer, you're doing it on behalf of Meadowtown, on behalf of your office. The broker will retain those forms. So your client, your profile, if you move offices, you can go into your settings and change your office. But if the new office isn't paying for it, you'll be prompted to pay for a subscription on an individual basis. Or if you join a board that is covering it, it'll be waived and you will not be prompted.
Gotcha. I hope that answers those questions. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourselves as well. You don't need to use the chat if you want to speak to Simon directly. I can say I've played around with it, and Simon, you're right. Like once you scan your license, it seems like a lot, like you really have to scroll, but really all you're doing is just following along. Just read, fill in the blank. You all know how to fill in a FINTRAC form. So that's all you're doing. You're just reading the blanks and clicking the steps, and it just kind of prompts you to move along. So I found it pretty easy once I was in there.
Yeah, it's been designed to be user intuitive and also designed by a realtor who was not very tech savvy. So I really dumbed it down for myself. And I think that it's been appreciated across the board. Now, it has evolved since then using the feedback from agents coast to coast. So if you ever have feedback or suggestions, don't be afraid. This is not your typical software company that delivers a solution to you and says, or a product to you and says, this is the way it is. This has been designed by realtors for realtors. So we value your opinion and we table that and implement it as we go.
I just see a question come in from Chris. I'm just looking here. So
Yeah.
would the app flag? Oh, yes, it does. Simon did show that. Does the app show if a license or passport is expired?
Yes, it will not allow you to proceed on the first transaction. When you scan the ID, it'll say, please get a current document. This one is expired. But if you're working with a client again and you're searching previous information and bringing it back in, you can use an expired document because you have record of it being verified the first time and it wasn't expired. You can reuse it and just make an effort to update any of the information, occupation, home address, are they politically exposed, etc.
Yeah, correct. That's all part of FINTRACK's rules. You're allowed to do that.
That's right.
Does anybody else have any questions? I feel like that was pretty to the point. I know it's a great app. I think it's a huge time saver for all of you. And again, thanks to Omdreb, it's a great member benefit that costs you nothing. So I
Thank you
encourage
for that
everybody to
reminder. That's right. Old Phil Melton
try.
is one of the boards that has taken this on. And there's one more feature in there that you may have seen when I was scrolling. It says run AML check. This software would cost a brokerage tens of thousands of dollars a year. You can press the button. We'll run it against politically exposed, known terrorists, known money launderer lists in 5 seconds and provide you a verified report that's attached to the transaction. I mean, you don't have to do that. It's optional. This feature is also available on the back end for the office to run. And for now, those additional features are free to use. And we're doing our best to include that in our pricing for the boards. Again, we pay for each one of those transactions. We've pre-purchased tens of thousands of them because we are the leading solution in the industry. Those companies need to negotiate with us. We're discussing the photo ID. Can you please confirm? Sorry.
Can you please confirm that we cannot use a photo of my brother's ID without using the remote link process? Can you please?
So if you're in person, I'll just go over this one more time. No worries. If you're in person and your client is with you and they have their ID and you would scan their ID.
Simon, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
So let's say that I am working from home and my brother is down the street and we're doing an offer DocuSign. I know my brother, I know his ID. I'm like, just send me a picture of it and I'll upload it. Can I do that? Or do I physically need to use your app to scan his ID?
Yeah, so you can either scan it in person or you can send the remote ID link. And I'll just tell you why. It is against the Privacy Act I know it's your brother, but it's considered a soft measure. And I know that you've seen your brother yesterday and you know his ID. If you want to do that, you can do that. I'm not here to tell you how to operate your business. We're just trying to provide you with the tools to do the job effectively, efficiently, and by the rules. Yeah, so send in the remote ID. He can scan the front, the back, scan his face, and it'll complete the form for you. I mean, why would you want to enter all the information manually and it would take you twice as long?
Yeah, so you can't, I guess what Amy is saying is, yeah, you can't
upload
have
an
somebody
image to scan it.
Right.
Yeah, we used to have that, Amy. And FINTRACK came down on us as March 28th. They warned us that that would be considered a soft method. You're absolutely right. I loved that feature during the past 2 years, the pandemic. We had this feature where you can access your photo library and pull up just the barcode. So not the front, not the true copy, and it would scan from the barcode. And we were told to remove that. So
I got
just
a bunch
following
of
our lawyer's legal advice.
We got a couple of questions here that just poured in. So just looking here about payment or the board's covering the cost. If you're an Omdreb member, if you hold a membership with The Oakville Milton board, this is covered. There's no additional fee. Marianne, I'm just reading yours. I was a member of BREB to search.
Maybe we
OmDreb.
should address if you're outside of the board.
Correct. So this cost is just covered by OmDreb. So I know there's BREB agents here. This is not offered through BREB. This is offered through OmDreb. So you need to have
Sorry,
that OmDreb.
BREB is?
Is it covered by BREB?
What is BREB?
No, that's the Brampton Real Estate Board. That's a separate
Brampton.
board.
I believe we have spoken to them. Give them
Jack-
a call. Let them know that.
I see Jackie raising her hand. Jackie, by all means.
Yeah, I can certainly have a discussion with Breb at the next board meeting. I am the president-elect for next year, so I'll have that conversation with them. Now, my question would be, I'm a member of both Brampton Real Estate Board and OmDreb.
Yeah.
So in the app, it asks me to select which board. So I select OmDreb?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. And for those of you that are members of other boards, reach out to your boards. This is exactly how we have become a member benefit. Once we have presented to 19 real estate boards, and 18 real estate boards have taken this on as a member benefit. The only one, of course, is the big one. I won't say who, but I think you know who
Gee,
that
I
is.
wonder.
I wonder who that could be.
We'll circle back to them soon. We're circling their wagons right now, so we're bringing in tremendous value. At the same time, I wanted to remind the Michael that if you're not using the AML shop, we work closely with them, and you receive a discount to their consultations and their assistance with 2-year effectiveness reviews. We bring major value to the industry, and for those of you outside of those boards, you can subscribe for $29.99 a year. That's less than a cup of coffee a month. It's going to save you paper, time, gas, and avoid deficiencies in submissions.
We are using the AML shop. We have a good relationship with them. So they're huge kudos to them. If anybody else has any questions, now is your chance. If you haven't downloaded the app, Simon, can you just walk them through how to do that?
Absolutely. So just head to the Google Play Store or the App Store or whatever app store is on your device, or you can go through our website and click the link. It'll take you there, fintracker.ca. All you have to do is, like Jackie said, select your board, fill out the registration form, make sure you enter your email address correctly, please. You have no idea how many times we have to reach out and say, please re-register. So we'll get you that welcome email. You set up your password and away you go. You can try it out with your own ID again. Just scan it and fill out the fields so you can get familiar. I can tell you that anybody who's used FinTracker has never gone back to filling the forms manually or going into web forms. We have had 0 brokerages unsubscribe across the country. This is not a product as much as it is a solution. And we are quickly becoming an industry standard. And we'll continue to listen to our customers and clients and evolve the application.
That's awesome. Okay, I think we're good. Anybody who has questions while they're doing that or downloading the app or trying to get set up, by all means, reach out to me or your office or to FinTracker, and we'll get it sorted. Simon, it was great to see you. Thank you for your time today.
Pleasure's all mine. Jackie, I'll wait to hear from you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Simon.
Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.